Yeah, it looks as though they are making the ruling even literally as we speak. Let us go. Can we go live now to the Court of Appeal? Let's have a listen.
I have concluded that the chances of failed asylum seekers being returned to their countries of origin are in any event low, not least because Rwanda has no agreements in place with any of the countries in question. In addition, extensive monitoring arrangements, formal and informal, of all those sent to Rwanda.
So we're being told the government have lost this case, Peter. It looks as though the Court of Appeal have ruled in favour of Care for Calais.
Okay.
Certainly, and their Public Service Union case. I don't know about the other one yet, but a defeat, I'm afraid, for the government, which presumably means, as you say, this will carry on to another
I would
stage.
imagine the government will appeal to the Supreme Court on this. And I suppose the big question in a lot of this is it, well, the whole question is it lawful to send people to Rwanda or not? But a lot of people will be asking questions about the sovereignty of Parliament in terms of saying, if the government wants to do this, why can't they do this? So, the Supreme Court, I would imagine, I'd be astonished if it doesn't go to the Supreme Court, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely right. Peter, thank you very much indeed. Let's talk to Isabel Oakeshott, who's here waiting patiently for us this morning, TalkTV's international editor. Isabel, I suppose the usual size of kind of foreboding and the usual kind of throwing hands in the air will now happen in government circles. The government loses yet another Court of Appeal ruling on Rwanda. I mean, this is just pathetic, isn't it?
I mean, the size and feelings of despair, I think, will be felt actually by most of our listeners and viewers over this. I mean, it is so depressingly predictable, isn't it? You know, you've got your learned friends who have decided after careful examination of the evidence that it's just not fair to send these people to Rwanda. I think that the idea of sending them to Rwanda was a very good symbolic thing, but it was never going to work. I said that right from the start. I wonder why we didn't consider a plan which would have sent them to one of our remaining overseas British territories. We still have some quite interesting places all over the world, and perhaps it would have been a bit easier to send them to bits of land that we already own. May I suggest, for example, Pitcairn Island, a long way away, perhaps they could start a new life there.
Yeah, well, the Falkland Islands have got plenty of room on it as well. But the point is, it would appear, and obviously we'll need to examine the ruling in some detail, but it would appear that the judges have decided that Rwanda is somehow not a safe country to send people to. This despite what we know, that the UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, has actually sent people there. We know that Israel has sent asylum seekers there. We know that Denmark has sent asylum seekers there, as has Norway. It's a perfectly safe place to go. As you say, it probably would never have worked anyway. But it seems to me that once again we are being hamstrung by left-wing barristers and lawyers and judges.
Completely. I mean, we just continually tie ourselves in knots in this country. I mean, it's very reflective of what happened over the Brexit years. You know, an absolute inability to make progress with anything because we are continually fighting ourselves. And this is what makes me, I'm afraid, in my moments of frustration, feel rather more receptive to the idea of benign dictatorships, because at least they can actually get stuff done.
Yeah.
You know,
well, this is it. I mean, in addition to Care for Calais, I mean, it's almost laughable. This is like some kind of Ealing comedy. The Public and Commercial Services Union was one of the plaintiffs, one of the people complaining about government policy. Now, the Public and Commercial Services Union employs in its group many civil servants who are supposed to work at the Home Office, who are supposed to carry out this policy. I mean, the world has gone insane.
You fundamentally can't have a civil service that gets to pick and choose which government policies it applies. The point of the whole way our country is set up, if we're going to have a fine democracy, which is what we would all prefer to have, is that the people elect the government, and the government then instructs the machinery of government, which are politically neutral, supposedly individuals, to carry out the will of the people, according to the manifesto that government has been elected on. And if you've got the machinery of state, the civil service, saying, actually, well, I'm sorry, I don't like the policies that we're being asked to enact, then you're actually subverting the entire system.
You really are. And Ken has sent me a text, quite rightly, to say, Mike, Ray Rwanda, will we now get the millions of pounds back that we gave to the Rwandans to take the illegal migrants from us in the first place? Well, it's a good question.
No, of course we won't, because they will probably then bring a case to say that, it's against their human rights for us to remove funds that they were entitled to expect, which they've, if they've received any, and I don't know if they have, they may well have allocated it. Perhaps they put a little bit more faith in the efficiency of the British government than was wise.
I mean, famously, Suella Braverman went to Rwanda. A lot of lefties made a lot of hay about the fact that she was seen laughing as she stood looking at the accommodation that the migrants were going to be going into. I mean, is there anybody in this bloody government who knows what they're doing? How the hell can they go there? I'm sorry to be so angry about this. How the hell can they go to a place like Rwanda, mince around as though they've got this deal sewn up and it's all going to be happy and everybody's going to be gloriously great in the world, and now it turns out they can't even do it?
Well, essentially, they will have known that it was going to be very difficult. I imagine they thought that all the publicity around it, as in you might be sent to Rwanda if you make this trip over, might in some way act as a deterrent. But of course, if you think this through logically, all that was going to happen is that the publicity would be the UK government can't even enact its deportation plan. So come on over, guys, because you're pretty much guaranteed a new life here.
Well, even as we speak, there are probably hundreds of them stepping off the boats onto the shores of Britain to be taken off to some luxury hotel somewhere and given some free pizza, a nice bed, not too many to a room, please, and some money in case you need to go out and buy some cigarettes.
Undoubtedly so. And I think what perhaps many people don't quite grasp, and I can understand why the magnitude of this is quite difficult to comprehend, is how this has become a multi-billion-pound industry. As you look at the projected growth for this thing, it's pretty much the only part of our economy that's actually doing really well, the migrant industry.
Yeah.
There are contractors like Serco, for example, who are making very, very good money out of this desperate situation. And it just doesn't seem to be a remotely good use of public resources to be spending millions of pounds every day on accommodating people who we don't allow to work whilst forcing them to stay here for as much as 2 years until we actually get our act together and declare that they had no right to be here in the first place.
Yeah, it really is quite staggering. I know there'll be a lot of people very angry about this decision this morning.